Hi Internet. So this is quite an interesting case, I thought. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the video, and you can then see and decide for yourself what emotions you think the passenger and driver might be experiencing as you see them in the video. I'm not going to give anything away really, but just want you to have your own guess. And then I want you to notice all the parking spaces behind the queue that the driver was stopped in, and then we'll come back to that in a bit. He's on his phone. Mr. OPX Range Rover 20 OPX. Definitely not parked, seeing as you rolled forwards. Okay, so I turned up at Ealing Magistrates Court for this phone driver, and initially he had pled not guilty. Very quickly the prosecutor showed the defendant and his barrister the video and said, look, there's absolutely no point in pleading not guilty here. The phone evidence is really clear, and it is, as you saw. So he changed his plea to guilty, and then I wasn't needed to attend. Anyway, luckily I had some spare time, so I did go and sit in the gallery. And by the way, on this day, 2 other camera cyclists were in court. One for a close pass, who was eventually found guilty, and another one for another mobile phone driver who then also changed his plea to guilty. It's pretty hard to argue with good camera evidence. Yeah, right, so the defendant's barrister was previously a district judge, I believe, very senior, and ran her own chambers, and I think she was very, very smart and very good at her job. She made a couple of really good arguments that impressed me, even though she didn't have a lot of really anything to work for on behalf of the defendant. Anyway, so the first thing that happened is the defendant pleaded guilty to using the phone, and then he tried to get out of getting any points by pleading special circumstances. Essentially, this was claiming that he had an emergency that needed to be dealt with without calling 999, which is about the only emergency call get out you have. And the essence of his argument was that his wife was in the process of a difficult pregnancy, and she thought she had got a bleed. So they were scrolling through their phones trying to look up symptoms or Harley Street consultants. Their argument was that they weren't going to phone 999 because it would take too long to get to them. And then in the end they decided to drive on to Queen Charlotte's Hospital, if I'm not mistaken, which isn't too far away from the direction they were going in. His wife was on the stand and testifying that she went into the hospital, went into the loos, spent... Well, her testimony said half an hour. His testimony said she only spent 10 minutes in there. And she checked up and thought there was nothing wrong, and then they left the hospital and went on their way. So of course there was no record of their visit to that hospital. So perhaps you might make of that what you will in terms of believability. Yeah, well, my own impression, and probably you've made it as well from seeing the video, is that there was no sense of panic or emergency on the people in the car. But hey, it was only a few moments of glimpse, it's hard to tell from that. Okay, then the CPS prosecutor made the point of, well, why didn't you pull over and make your call from there to do it totally legally? And he was like, oh yeah, we didn't see a place to pull over. And if you notice, behind the driver and where they were in that queue, there's just acres and acres of parking spaces. I think the testimony was that he had driven 5 to 7 minutes from a nearby restaurant before this happened. So there'd been quite a lot of parking places he passed and could have gone into. Maybe someone in the comments will know what the guy was scrolling through on his phone and can tell me if that was a list of Harley Street consultants or anything like that. I suspect it was something different, but who knows? Yeah, so that was quite interesting. Anyway, the magistrates went away and came back and disallowed his plea for special circumstances. Unsurprisingly, I think. I didn't think it was very credible. Then they moved on to hearing his plea for exceptional hardship because he is a Tata and was thus he had to be considered for disqualification. So if I remember correctly, he had 3 speeding convictions or FPNs. So basically 2 of those were for 3 points and a fine. So that gave him 6 points. And the 3rd speeding conviction got him a 42-day banning. Which on a brief lookup, you only get banned for brief periods if your speeding was at a particularly high speed, if I'm not mistaken. So that tells me that this guy is really, well, in my opinion anyway, he's probably quite a poor driver with a very poor driving record. And now to be caught on his phone, I'm not very impressed, I must say. I should say as well, during this whole trial, I was getting absolute glares from him and his wife, which I don't mind at all. I mean, they can be cross with me, but to me that suggests that they blame me, not themselves for their bad, or himself for the bad driving and the mistakes he's made, that it's my fault and not his. And that tells me this is not somebody who's likely to learn, unfortunately. And that's really what I want. I want him to do better. I don't want him to be speeding. I don't want him to be driving on the phone. And then if he can avoid doing that, then there's absolutely no need for anyone to be punished. Yeah, so we went on to the whole plea for exceptional hardship. Exceptional hardship really applies to other people than the driver. I mean, you expect to be under some hardship if you're banned from driving. And this exceptional hardship is meant to cover, say, members of your family or members of your job, or your work and that kind of thing. So the first part of his plea for exceptional hardship was that his wife was looking after 2 small children. It turned out under cross-examination that she does have a driving license and just doesn't like to drive, so she relies on her husband, which is fair enough, but that's not exceptional hardship. She just have to buckle under and drive as she needs to. So when the magistrates eventually came back, that part of the exceptional hardship claim was disallowed. Okay, then the second part of the hardship claim came based on his work. I can't really give too many details about that, but effectively he has to drive around for work in a small firm, and he's really the only one that can do it. So, and with a number of circumstances that I did believe and I thought were realistic, it would mean that some employees of this firm would end up losing their jobs. So I think the magistrates came back on that and made a very fair judgment and allowed exceptional hardship. I mean, that said, it's right that he has exceptional hardship, but that said, my opinion is this is somebody who is in the problem percentage of drivers who keeps reoffending and doesn't take responsibility. But hey, that's only my opinion, you can make up your own mind from what's happened. So yeah, he got a fine. Let me just look that up. That was 6 points. So he's now on 12 points. He got £300 cost, a £332 fine, and £133 surcharge. So he's now driving around on 12 points, and I should imagine his insurance will be exceptionally expensive. Yeah, and that was about it really. I didn't talk about this at the time as I felt kind of, well, it was late at the court anyway. We went on until it was dark, and yeah, the guy sort of glaring at me, and the complete non-accepting of his law breaking just kind of got to me a little bit. I hope he does better in the future anyway. I wish him and his wife well. I don't think they wish me well though, but that's okay. All right, see you guys later.